Tonight we cover the unexpected net migration boom, the formation of Jobs and Skills Australia, Northern Territory hoping more people want to migrate there, Victoria offering 491 visas to those who live in Melbourne, why there are so many PhD students waiting so long to get their student visas, and the reason why so many 476 visa applicants are depressed. Hi, I'm Karl Konrad and welcome to the weekly edition of Australian Immigration News, proudly brought to you by Australian Immigration Law Services right here in Sydney. Since Australia opened its borders in December 21, who would have expected the huge rush to get here? Well, it seems the federal government certainly didn't. They vastly underestimated the numbers who would come to our shores. In October last year, the government was telling everyone they expected the net migration number to be about 235,000 in the 22 to 23 financial year. In reality, it has surged well past this and will likely hit over 350,000 by the 30th of June. Fewer people are deciding to leave Australia and more are coming. Now, this might be contributing to the rental market squeeze that most Australians are experiencing, but the Treasurer is not complaining, for it's giving the economy and the budget a significant shot in the arm. So is the cost of prosperity resulting in all of us living a little closer together? A bill was passed in Parliament this week establishing the permanent functions and governance arrangements for the Jobs and Skills Australia, known as JSA. Back in July last year, the Prime Minister promised that the JSA would be established to combat the critical skills shortages Australia was facing and also advise the government on migration issues. During a recent webinar, members of the JSA educated the public on their roles within the migration system to help solve these skills shortages.
We're monitoring and advising government on whether it's adequate in meeting the skills needs. And one of the things that jumps out at you in there is, do we need to increase migration? Do we need to increase the throughput of the education system? Both, does it need to be vet? Does it need to be higher ed? So part of our role is to try and make sure that all the different parts of this system are working together synergistically to solve Australia's skills problems. What we can provide is the glue that makes that all hang together, I guess, and a plan for Australia as a whole, bringing together all of the plans of the various skills councils into a national plan that anticipates the skill needs of Australia and makes sure that our higher education system, our vocational education system and our migration system is up to the task of achieving this kind of synergistic operation of the various components of the skill system to meet our skill needs, to keep unemployment down, to get good matching of the population to the jobs and to grow productivity. Minister for Home Affairs, Minister O'Neill, made a speech about the future of the migration system, and she's now either just about to or may have just received the recommendations of the Migration Review panel. But she made it clear in that speech, and she spoke to us at Jobs and Skills Australia, that she was seeing our advice and our evidence on the priorities of the migration system as being a key part of the decision-making process.
The JSA is going to publish new quarterly labour market updates, and the most recent one they published, the top 20 occupations in demand. Here is how they came up with that list.
This list is essentially an index, so to speak, of what are the current shortages, what are the current jobs, occupations that have lots of job advertisements for vacancies, as well as what are those occupations which are likely to have high growth going forward. Now, when you combine all of that, you get this picture of occupations that are most in demand in Australia at the moment. And so it gives you a bit of a dynamic feel to where the challenges are likely to be persistent.
The issue of how international students were faring in the labour market was raised, along with the possible things that could be done to assist them.
How international students are faring in the labour market, what we can do to help.
Yeah, well, this is quite a significant issue, and we've got the migration review has been underway and a review of higher education through the Higher Education Accord, and they've both been interested in this issue that many international students come to Australia in the hope that they will ultimately become permanent migrants and be successful in the Australian labour market. And unfortunately, the evidence is that graduates haven't been doing that well in the Australian labour market, and quite a lot have decided not to progress on through the migration system to permanent migration. And there are a number of factors at play here. One is a thing that Raed was talking about earlier in his analysis of skill shortages. So quite a lot of these international student graduates are in areas like civil engineering and ICT, two of the areas that Raed mentioned in that quality gap category. And what has been found in our research is that quite a lot of the graduates who are qualified for employment in those fields are not deemed to be suitable by employers, and that would include quite a lot of international student graduates. And employers are looking for experience, and they're looking for those employability skills that Raed talked about, like teamwork and communication skills and so on. And now this is an issue for domestic graduates as well as international ones, but on balance in those occupations, the international students aren't doing quite as well as the domestic ones. The domestic ones are still having challenges because of lack of experience and some of those generic skills. So we need to work with both domestic and international. But international is struggling a little bit more, and that may have something to do with the visa system as well, because the pathway to permanent migration is uncertain. And so both the students themselves and potential employers have some doubts about their long-run status in the labour market. So there's a combination of things to work on there. And I think the Minister for Home Affairs has also flagged that she sees some tweaking of the migration system to help support them. So yeah, it's a big issue.
Now, this last point about visas having something to do with it is absolutely right. I'm not sure, though, that they fully realise the barriers international students face once they complete their studies and are looking to gain that critical work experience. The largest barrier is, of course, that many employers won't even look at you if you do not hold permanent residency. Now, don't get me wrong, of course, many appreciate the ability to gain long working visas after completing their studies, but many find it so frustrating not to be given a chance simply because employers don't want to spend the time training temporary visa holders. That fact was well highlighted by SBS News. In the article, Rada highlighted that employers nearly always asked her first if she's an Australian citizen or permanent resident, and if not, what visa does she hold? Now, there is no possible law that you could introduce to stop employers from asking this question, but what could help is giving former international students a more direct pathway to permanent residency. This way, employers would have certainty that such visa holders are going to be around for the long term. An example of this is the partner visa holders who hold their first stage TR visa. Since this provisional TR visa is a direct PR pathway, but it just takes some time, employers are often happy to accept job applicants. If the minister in the review process could create a direct pathway employers could rely on, then you will see a significant shift in their approach to job seekers. Then employers would get great long-term workers, and the TR visa holders would not feel so discriminated against. And good news this week, the Northern Territory is looking for more offshore applicants to go and live there. They have outlined a new nomination criteria with a large degree of flexibility. The work experience requirement is only 1 year for many occupations on the special Northern Territory offshore migration occupation list. You can find many surprising occupations there, such as flight attendants and funeral workers. Go check it out for yourselves using the link in the description below. There are 3 streams available to offshore applicants. The priority occupation stream for those who have a skill assessment listed on the offshore occupation list. The Northern Territory family stream, where applicants may have a family member in the Northern Territory, and the Northern Territory job offer stream, which, as it sounds, you must have a verifiable job offer in your nominated occupation. The family and job offer streams can access all the occupations on the Immigration Department State or Territory Skilled Occupation list. The Northern Territory family stream is indeed very generous, probably far more generous than any other state or territory in Australia. Even family members who hold certain temporary visas, such as the 489 and 491 visas, or even on a bridging visa associated with the 887 or 191 visa subclasses, can help their relatives to gain sponsorship approval. The list of eligible relatives is generous also, and includes first cousins and grandparents. Also this week, the big news was that the Victorian State Government opened the 491 visa subclass nominations to applicants who are living in Melbourne. Previously, this was only open to applicants living in regional Victoria. However, the bad news is that Victoria still keeps its somewhat restricted policy of allowing only one registration of interest. So this means that you have to choose between registering your interest of the 190 visa and or the 491 visa, but you can't ask for both. Those in Melbourne who have been patiently waiting for their 190 invitations are now faced with a perplexing choice. Do they give up their hope of being nominated for the 190 visa and go for the 491 visa? Yes, the 190 visa is the sought after prize, but do you keep waiting for it at the expense of missing out on a residency visa altogether? It is very cruel that Victoria forces you to choose between the two. Much easier if they'd made the choice for you, just being able to register your interest in both subclasses. The 476 visa processing has been hit hard by the visa backlog, and many applicants have now been waiting well over 3 years. A Freedom of Information request on the number of case officers actually processing 476 visa applications demonstrates that there is only 8.8 staff looking after that caseload. Now you would think that because this visa is not very complicated, 8.8 people would actually get through quite a few applications. It makes you wonder if they are working on a full-time basis, because there seems not to be much happening in the 476 backlog. Recently, the Education Minister boasted in the media that student visa processing times have come down to just 16 days.
We're encouraging more students from all around the world to study here. I'll head off to India in the next few weeks, working with the Education Minister there on a mutual recognition agreement, so we make it easier for students to study here.
However, an article in SBS News highlights the plight of hundreds of international PhD students who are waiting as long as 3 years to have their visas despite having a university offer and in many cases a PhD scholarship. I think the Immigration Department has some explaining to do, because aren't they meant to be supporting the higher education sector? And now it's time for one of our readers' comments. Sathish writes in and says, as always, it is very informative this time too. Is there any updates on 191 regional sponsor grants and any exemption on the minimum threshold for the 491 holders affected by COVID lockdowns in Victoria? It's a little early for 191 visa processing times just yet. As far as the concession goes, I wish there was, but it doesn't look like any will be given so far. Concessions were given to 489 visa holders when they applied for the 887 visa, so why not give the 491 visa holders concessions as well? Anyone who worked through the pandemic here deserves a medal, so the least Australia could do is give them concessions in return. Well, that's all for another fascinating week in the world of Australian immigration. Again, thanks for joining us till the end and supporting the work we do here. If you need any help, you know where to find us. As always, take care out there, and I'll see you next time, so bye for now.